Captain Jeho Park stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the massive Federation station grow larger on the view screen. The structure was enormous, bigger than any city on Earth. Hundreds of ships from different alien species moved around it like insects around a hive. Some ships had smooth metal hulls, while others looked like they were grown from crystal or bone. After 3 years of careful communication with the Galactic Federation, humanity was finally here for the big moment. "We're receiving docking instructions," said Lieutenant Mira Nam from her station. She was young, but had proven herself excellent at understanding alien customs and languages. "They're assigning us to the diplomatic wing." Jeho nodded and turned to look at Ambassador Hannah Choi, who stood behind him with her hands clasped professionally. Hannah was in her 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been chosen to represent Earth because of her skill in negotiation and her calm demeanor under pressure. Today, she wore formal diplomatic robes in deep blue, the color of Earth's oceans. "Nervous?" Jeho asked her quietly. "Always," Hannah replied with a slight smile. "But ready?" The ship docked smoothly, and soon they were walking through corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Jeho saw species with fur, scales, feathers, and some with skin that seemed to shift colors. Some walked on 2 legs like humans, others floated or moved on multiple limbs. The air had a strange smell, not unpleasant, just different. It was the scent of 1,000 worlds mixing together. A tall alien with gray skin and 4 arms approached them. It wore elaborate robes covered in symbols. "Ambassador Choi, Captain Park, welcome. I am Counselor Viaran. Please follow me to the preparation chambers." They followed Viaran through the station. Dr. Soman Lee walked beside Jeho, carrying a datapad filled with technical information. Salman was Earth's lead physicist and had been instrumental in developing humanity's quantum jump drive. She kept looking around at everything with scientific curiosity. "This place is incredible," Salman whispered. "The energy readings alone suggest they're using at least 7 different power generation methods simultaneously." Viaran led them to a large room with comfortable seating arranged in a circle. Other Federation representatives were already there, representing various species. Viaran gestured for the humans to sit. "Before tomorrow's ceremony, we must discuss protocols," Viaran began. His voice had a musical quality despite being translated through their devices. "When a species joins the Federation, there are certain traditions. Chief among them is the Technology Sharing Accord." Hannah leaned forward slightly. "We've heard of this, but the details were never made completely clear." Another alien, this one resembling a large insect with bright blue chitin, spoke up. "It is simple. All member species contribute their unique technologies to the Federation database. This allows all of us to benefit from each other's discoveries. Unity through sharing. Your quantum jump drive technology is particularly interesting to us," Viaran said, looking at Dr. Lee. "It appears to be far more efficient than our traditional warp systems. Such innovation would benefit the entire Federation." Salman shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Jeho noticed her tension. Hannah smiled diplomatically. "That's very flattering. Can you tell us more about how this sharing works in practice? What happens after a technology is added to the database?" "All members gain access," the insect alien explained. "The Council distributes the information appropriately. Younger species are guided in implementation by elder species who have more experience." "Guided," Hannah repeated. As if testing the word VRN continued, "The Federation has existed for over 50,000 of your years. We have learned that unrestricted technology can be dangerous in inexperienced hands. The Council ensures safe and proper use." They talked for several hours about procedures, ceremonies, and expectations. Jeho noticed that whenever Hannah asked specific questions about who controlled shared technology or how decisions were made about distribution, the answers became vague. The Federation representatives kept using words like cooperation and guidance and mutual benefit, but never gave concrete details as they left the meeting. Jeho received an encrypted message on his personal device. It was from Admiral Hainkong back on Earth. The message was brief but clear. "Do not commit to anything yet. Investigate first." That evening, The human delegation gathered in their assigned quarters on the station. The rooms were large and had been modified to accommodate human needs, which Ji-ho appreciated. He sat with Hannah, Salman, Mira, and intelligence analyst Do-yeon Kim. "Something feels wrong," Salman said immediately. "They're very interested in our quantum drive." Too interested. Do-yeon, who had been quietly accessing Federation public records all day, looked up from his datapad. "I've been reading their historical files. Did you know that 43 species have joined the Federation in the last 1,000 years? Want to guess how many major technological innovations have come from those species after they joined?" "How many?" Hannah asked. "Zero. Not one single breakthrough from any junior member species after their joining ceremony." The room went silent. Mira spoke up, her voice uncertain. "Maybe they just become satisfied. Like they get access to all the Federation's technology, so they stop innovating on their own? Or maybe," Ji-ho said slowly, "they can't innovate because the Federation controls their technology." Hannah stood and paced the room. "We need more information before we make accusations. Do-yeon, Mira, I want you to dig deeper into the archives tomorrow. Find out everything you can about how the technology-sharing accord has actually functioned historically. Look for species that had unique advantages before joining." "What about the ceremony?" Salman asked. "It's tomorrow afternoon. We'll attend," Hannah decided. "We'll be polite. But we won't sign anything or make any commitments until we understand exactly what we're agreeing to." She looked at each of them seriously. "Earth sent us here to protect humanity's interests, not just to make friends. If this accord isn't what it appears to be, we need to know before it's too late." Ji-ho looked out the viewport at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, billions of humans waited to hear if their species would join the galactic community. They had worked so hard to reach this moment, to prove they belonged among the stars. But what if belonging came at too high a price? "Get some rest," he told everyone. "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." As the others left, Hannah stayed behind. She stood next to Ji-ho at the viewport. "Do you think we're being paranoid?" she asked quietly. Ji-ho thought about it. "Maybe, but humans didn't get this far by trusting blindly. We ask questions. We doubt. Sometimes that makes us difficult, but it also keeps us alive." Hannah smiled slightly. "Then let's keep being difficult." Do-yeon Kim had been awake for 18 hours straight, and his eyes burned from staring at alien text on his screen. Beside him, Mira Naim looked equally exhausted but excited. They sat in a small archive room deep within the Federation station, surrounded by holographic displays showing thousands of years of records. "Look at this," Mira said, pulling up a document. "The Kalahari species. They joined the Federation 400 years ago. Before joining, they had the most advanced medical technology in known space. They could cure diseases that killed billions among other species." Do-yeon leaned closer to read. "What happened to them? After they shared their medical technology with the Federation database, they were relocated to isolated sectors. Trade sanctions were placed on their worlds for regulatory violations. Their economy collapsed." Myra scrolled through more files. "They never developed any new medical advances after that. But look here, the Federation elder species now use all their techniques. They just don't credit the Kalahari anymore. It's a pattern," Do-yeon said grimly. He pulled up his own research. "I found 11 other species with similar stories. Each one had something unique. Each one shared it as part of the joining ceremony. Each one was then marginalized within Federation politics." He highlighted sections of text. "The Drash had revolutionary energy weapons. Shared them, then were accused of militarism and stripped of their defensive fleets. The Yanara created artificial gravity technology that's now standard on every Federation ship. After sharing it, they were given development assistance that somehow left them dependent on Federation trade for basic resources." Mira sat back, her face pale. "This isn't a Federation. It's a protection racket." They brought their findings to Ambassador Hannah and Captain Ji-ho before dawn. Dr. Soman was already there. Having spent the night analyzing Federation technology itself, "What did you find?" Hannah asked them. Do-yeon presented his research, walking them through each case study. Mira added the cultural context, explaining how these species had gone from confident equals to diminished junior partners. When they finished, Hannah's expression was troubled but not surprised. "I had a feeling," she said quietly. "The way they talk, the way they avoid direct answers. It reminded me of certain corporations back home. The ones that offer partnerships, but really want acquisitions." Salman cleared her throat. "I have something to add. I've been examining the technology the Federation uses based on scans and public technical documents." She brought up holographic schematics. "It's a mess. Nothing integrates properly. There. Ships use 3 different incompatible power systems because they just bolted together.
Technology.
From different species without understanding the underlying principles. They're not innovators. They're collectors. Like magpies," Jiho said. "Taking shiny things and hoarding them." Exactly, Soman agreed. "And our quantum jump drive is the shiniest thing they've seen in a long time. It's not just faster than their warp drives. It's fundamentally different based on quantum tunneling rather than space compression. If they get their hands on it, they'll try to reverse engineer it, probably fail to understand it completely, and bolt it onto their ships anyway." Hannah stood and walked to the window. The Federation station gleamed in the light of the local star. "We need to contact Earth. This is bigger than a diplomatic decision. This affects humanity's entire future." They sent an encrypted message through quantum communication. One of humanity's other innovations that the Federation didn't know about yet. President Taiwan Shin responded within an hour, his message brief but clear. "Do not share the quantum drive. Do not agree to any technology transfer. We will support whatever decision you make." Ceremony was scheduled for that afternoon. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species would attend, either in person or through holographic projection. It was supposed to be humanity's triumphant entry into galactic society. Counselor Vieren came to escort them personally. "A historic day," he said pleasantly, as they walked through the corridors. "I remember when my own species joined, many generations ago. The pride of contributing to something greater than ourselves." Counselor Hannah said carefully, "I've been reading about the Kalahari. What happened to them seems unfortunate." Braun's pleasant expression didn't change. "The Kalahari made choices that put them at odds with Federation regulations. It was regrettable, but necessary." "What choices?" "They refused to fully cooperate with technology integration protocols. They wanted to maintain independent control over their medical advances." Varan's tone suggested this was obviously unreasonable. In a Federation, there can be no secrets between members. Trust requires complete openness. "Complete openness," Hannah repeated. "Does that go both ways?" Something flickered in Varen's large eyes. "I'm not sure I understand your question, Ambassador. The elder species who sit on the council, do they share all their technology with junior members?" "Of course, everything is in the database. But junior members need guidance to access it, correct? Guidance that the council controls?" Viaren stopped walking. They were in a quiet corridor, away from the crowds. "Ambassador Choi, may I speak frankly?" "Please do." "The Federation has maintained peace and stability for 50,000 years. That doesn't happen by accident. It requires order, structure, and yes, guidance. Younger species often have brilliant innovations, but they lack the wisdom to understand the implications." His voice was still polite, but there was steel underneath. "We protect them from themselves. We protect the galaxy from chaos. By controlling their technology," Geo said. "By managing it responsibly," Viaren corrected. "Surely humans understand this. You have your own history of technological disasters. Nuclear weapons. Biological warfare. Climate collapse that you barely survived. You survived it by learning from it," Hannah said quietly. "Not by having someone else control our choices." Viren studied her for a long moment. "I see, Ambassador. I hope you'll think very carefully before making any decisions today. The Federation can be an incredible ally, but it can also be a difficult adversary. Species that refuse cooperation often find themselves very alone in a large galaxy." It wasn't subtle. It was a threat delivered with a smile. "Thank you for the advice," Hannah said calmly. They continued to the ceremony hall. It was magnificent. A vast space with a domed ceiling that somehow showed the actual stars outside rather than just a projection. Thousands of beings filled the seats, talking in hundreds of languages that blended into a constant musical noise. At the center of the room was a raised platform where the council sat. 7 ancient species who had founded the Federation millennia ago. The ceremony began with traditional music and speeches. Various counselors talked about unity, cooperation, and the joy of welcoming humanity to the galactic community. Dr. Salman sat beside Geo and whispered, "They're really laying it on thick." Finally, it was time for humanity's part. A counselor called Ambassador Hannah to the platform. She walked up with steady steps, and the hall fell silent. Today, the counselor announced, humanity formally joins the Federation. Ambassador Choi will now present their technological contributions to the collective database. As is tradition, every eye in the massive hall focused on Hannah, somewhere far away on Earth. Billions of humans watched through transmitted video feeds. Hannah stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled species. She thought about the Kalahari, isolated and broken. She thought about the Drosh and the Yanara and all the others who had trusted and paid the price. She thought about humanity's hard journey to the stars, all the mistakes and triumphs that had brought them here. Then she spoke. On behalf of humanity, I thank the Federation for this welcome. However, after careful consideration, we must respectfully decline to share our quantum jump drive technology at this time. The silence in the hall became absolute. Then chaos erupted. The noise in the ceremony hall was deafening. Thousands of beings were shouting, clicking, buzzing, and making sounds that human ears couldn't properly process. Some aliens stood and waved appendages angrily. Others simply stared in shock. The 7 council members on the central platform looked like they had been slapped. Ambassador Hannah stood calmly at the podium, waiting for order to return. Captain Ji-ho had his hand near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless if things turned violent. Dr. Soman gripped her datapad so hard her knuckles were white. Myra and Doyon looked terrified but determined. Finally, one of the council members raised a crystalline limb, and a sound wave pulsed through the hall. Everything went silent instantly. "Explain yourself, human," the counselor said. Its voice was cold and sharp as broken glass. Hannah took a breath. The Galactic Federation claims to value cooperation and mutual benefit. But after examining your historical records, we found a disturbing pattern. Species that join and share their unique technologies rarely prosper afterward. In fact, they often find themselves marginalized, sanctioned, or controlled. Lies. Another counselor shouted. This one looked like a mass of tentacles arranged around a central brain. "We have brought order and peace to thousands of worlds." "Peace that requires complete submission," Hannah replied. She activated her own datapad, and holographic displays appeared showing the research Doyen and Mira had compiled. The Kalahari, the Drosh, the Yanara. 11 species in total, all with remarkable innovations. All reduced to dependent client states after sharing their technology. You don't want partners. You want subjects? Counselor Viaran stood, his forearms spread in what might have been a calming gesture. Ambassador Choi, you misunderstand. These species faced difficulties because they resisted proper integration. They wanted to maintain independence in matters that affected the entire Federation. That cannot be allowed. Why not? Ji-ho asked, standing up from his seat. Why can't a species be part of a federation and still maintain sovereignty over their own innovations? Because it creates imbalance. The tentacled counselor shouted. If every species hoards its advantages, there is no unity, no cooperation. You mean no control? Salman said, also standing. Her voice shook but grew stronger. You've built a system where you acquire technology from younger species, integrate it into your own infrastructure, and then ensure those species can never threaten your dominance. It's exploitation dressed up as cooperation. Another counselor, one that looked like living stone, spoke in a rumbling voice. Humanity has been in space for mere decades. You know nothing of galactic politics. Your arrogance will cost you dearly, perhaps Hannah said. But it's our choice to make. We won't surrender our technological independence, not even for a seat at your table. The Crystal Counselor leaned forward. Then you will have no seat at all. Humanity will be declared outside Federation jurisdiction. Trade sanctions will be imposed. Your ships will be denied access to Federation stations. Your colonies will receive no assistance or protection. Its voice dripped with contempt. Let us see how your pride sustains you when you are alone in the dark. The human delegation left the hall in tense silence. As they walked through the corridors back to their ship, aliens they passed either stared with open hostility or quickly looked away. No one spoke to them. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Jiho ordered immediate departure. Get us out of here before they change their minds about letting us leave. As the ship undocked and accelerated away from the station, Hannah sent an encrypted message to Earth. We have refused. Sanctions incoming. Prepare for isolation. President Taiwan Shin's response came quickly. He appeared on the view screen, his face serious but not afraid. Behind him, Jiho could see the flags of Earth's united government. Ambassador Choi, Captain Park, you have done well. We stand by your decision. Humanity will not bow to exploitation no matter the cost. Sir Hannah said carefully, this could mean war. Some of the counselors were very clear about the consequences. Admiral Hang Kong appeared on a second screen. She was aboard the fleet's flagship in orbit around Earth. Let them try, she said grimly. Our quantum drives give us a significant tactical advantage. We can jump in and out of battle faster than they can track. And our weapons technology, which they know nothing about, is similarly advanced. I'd prefer to avoid war, President Shin said. But we won't surrender out of fear. Earth's fleets will take defensive positions around our colonies. Hannah, I'm recalling you to Earth. We need you here to coordinate our response. Over the following weeks, the Federation made good on its threats. Human ships were denied docking rights at any Federation station. Trade agreements were canceled. Several alien species that had been friendly to humans suddenly stopped all communication. Earth's colonies found themselves cut off from the broader galactic economy. But something unexpected happened. Humanity didn't collapse. Earth's colonies had been designed for self-sufficiency from the beginning. Humans remembered the old days when they were confined to one planet and couldn't afford to depend on others. Their ships could manufacture most of what they needed from raw materials. Their quantum drives meant they could travel between human worlds quickly without using the Federation's warp gates. More importantly, a few species began sending secret messages. Captain. Jiho was aboard the defensive station near Mars when the first one arrived. It was from a species called the Merithians, a relatively young Federation member. The message was encrypted and cautious. We saw what you did. We wish we had your courage. Can we talk? Jiho forwarded it to Earth Command, and President Shin personally authorized a response. Within days, Envoy Yunho Bei was dispatched on a secret diplomatic mission to Merithian space. Yunho was young but clever, skilled at reading between the lines of what people said. He reported back after meeting with Merithian leaders. They're terrified of the Council, but they're also desperate. The Federation controls their agricultural technology, which they developed themselves before joining. Now they have to pay licensing fees to use their own innovations. They're being bled dry. What do they want from us? Admiral Han asked. An alternative. They want to know if there's a way to break free without being destroyed. Meanwhile, Dr. Salmon and her team weren't idle. They began analyzing everything they knew about Federation technology, looking for weaknesses. What they found was enlightening. Federation's strength is actually a weakness, Salmon explained during a briefing. They have so much disparate technology that their systems are incredibly complicated. Nothing talks to anything else properly. They need huge crews to manage all the incompatible systems. If we can exploit those integration problems, we could level the tactical field significantly. Back at the Federation Council station, Counselor Thane was furious. Thane was a member of one of the founding species, and he took humanity's defiance as a personal insult. They must be punished, Thane insisted during a council meeting. If we allow this rebellion to stand, other species will get ideas. We should send a peacekeeping force to their colonies. Show them the cost of defiance. Councillor Viarin, to his credit, argued against this. Open warfare will only prove the humans' point. We claim to be peaceful and cooperative. Attacking them makes us look like tyrants. We are not tyrants. Thane roared. We are protectors of galactic order. Order that these primitives threaten with their selfishness. In the end, the council voted to send a diplomatic mission backed by a military escort. 15 warships were dispatched to the human colony on Kepler 44 to be we. With orders to intimidate the colonists into compliance, Captain Jiho received the warning from human intelligence assets still operating in Federation space. He immediately took a small fleet to intercept, including his own Horizon's Edge and 5 other vessels. When the Federation ships arrived at Kepler 4 for 2B, they found the human fleet waiting. The Federation commander opened communications. Human vessels, stand down. We are on an authorized mission. Jiho appeared on screen. This is a human colony in human space. Your authorization means nothing here. Turn around. You are outnumbered 3-1, the Federation commander said. Do not be foolish. Numbers aren't everything, Jiho replied calmly. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The ships faced each other across the void. Weapon systems were armed on both sides. One mistake, one nervous officer, and war would begin. Then new contacts appeared on sensors. 6 more ships, but not human. They were Merithian vessels, taking positions alongside Jiho's fleet. The Merithian captain broadcast on all channels. The Merithian Republic stands with humanity. If you attack them, you attack us. The Federation commander looked confused and angry. The Merithians are Federation members. You cannot, we were, the Merithian captain interrupted. We just declared independence. It seems like a good day for it. More ships began appearing. 2 other species that Yunho had been secretly negotiating with sent vessels. The numbers were now roughly equal. The Federation commander knew he was in trouble. A battle now might be won, but it would be costly, and the political fallout would be enormous. He made the smart choice and ordered his fleet to withdraw. As the Federation ships jumped away, Jiho let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. On his screen, the Merithian captain smiled, a strange expression on her alien features. Captain Park, she said, I think we should talk about forming a different kind of federation. One that actually means something. 6 months had passed since the standoff at Kepler 44 to B. Earth's situation had transformed from isolated to influential. Minister Sung Kwan sat in his office on Earth, looking at reports from across known space. As the new Secretary of Interstellar Relations, his job was to coordinate humanity's growing network of alliances. It was exhausting but exhilarating work. The Independent Coalition, as they were calling themselves, now included 12 species. After the Merithians had publicly broken away from the Federation, others had found the courage to follow. Some were young species tired of being exploited. Others were older members who had simply grown weary of the Council's control. Envoy Yunho Bei had become something of a legend. He traveled constantly between coalition worlds, negotiating trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Unlike the Federation's one-sided technology demands, the coalition operated on fair exchange. Each species offered what they could and received what they needed, with clear terms and mutual respect. The Voxry just signed on, Yunho reported during his latest check-in. He looked tired, but happy. They're bringing some incredible mineral extraction technology. In exchange, they want access to our medical advances and the Merithian agricultural techniques. Everybody benefits, Sung said with satisfaction. That's how it should work. On the research station orbiting Luna, Dr. Soman Lee was having the time of her life. She worked alongside scientists from 6 different species, each bringing their unique perspective to shared problems. The Merithians understood biological systems in ways humans never had. The Rokash had mathematical theories that opened new possibilities in physics. The Denari could manipulate materials at the molecular level. Look at this, Soman said excitedly to her team, projecting a holographic equation. If we combine the Rokash probability calculations with our quantum tunneling principles and use Denari materials for the drive housing. We could potentially create a jump drive that's twice as efficient as our current model. A Rokash scientist, its 4 eyes gleaming with interest, added several variables to the equation. And if we incorporate Merithian biological computing for the navigation systems, we could reduce the calculation time by 80%. It was collaboration in its truest form. Each species contributed but also retained ownership of their core innovations. They built on each other's work without stealing it. The result was progress that benefited everyone. Meanwhile, the Galactic Federation was struggling. Dr. Juan Hong, an economist who had joined the diplomatic corps, spent her time analyzing Federation financial data that Coalition intelligence had acquired. It's worse than we thought. Giwan explained during a briefing with President Taiwan Xin and Admiral Haiyan Kong. The Federation's entire economy is structured around dependency. Elder species provide loans and development assistance to younger members, but the terms ensure they can never pay it back. It's a debt trap. And now that trap is breaking, Admiral Haiyan said with grim satisfaction. Without the constant flow of new technology and dependent client states, the elder species are facing economic problems. I don't want to destroy the Federation. Despite everything, it has maintained some level of peace for millennia. I just want to change it. Some of them understand that, Juan said. We're getting signals that a few council members recognize their system is failing. But the hardliners like Thane are doubling down. And indeed, Councillor Thane was making things worse for the Federation. He pushed for harsher sanctions against Coalition members and tried to organize military action against human colonies. But each aggressive move only pushed more species toward independence. The Kelhari, those medical innovators who had been crushed 400 years ago, were among the most enthusiastic to join the Coalition. Their representative speaking to Ambassador Hannah had tears in his eyes. For 4 centuries, we watched others use our discoveries while we suffered in isolation. We thought we had been wrong to resist. Now we see we were simply ahead of our time. He clasped Hannah's hand in his 3-fingered grip. Thank you for showing us we weren't crazy. Not everything went smoothly. There were tensions between Coalition members sometimes. The Rokash and Denari had old territorial disputes that flared up. Some species were suspicious of each other. But unlike the Federation's top-down control, the Coalition addressed these issues through negotiation and compromise. This is messy, Sung admitted to Yunho during one particularly frustrating mediation session between 2 bickering species. The Federation's way was cleaner, just obey or else. Cleaner isn't always better, Yunho replied. Freedom is messy. Democracy is messy, but it's worth it. Captain Jiho commanded the Coalition's growing defensive fleet. What had started as a few ships at Kepler 440 had grown into a proper military force, not for conquest, but for protection. The Federation might accept the Coalition's existence eventually, but until then, they needed to be ready. During a patrol near the border between Coalition and Federation space, Jiho's sensors detected a ship in distress. It was a Federation vessel, a small cargo hauler that had suffered engine failure. Captain, should we help? His navigator asked uncertainly. They're technically the enemy. Jiho didn't hesitate. They're people in trouble. We help. The Horizon's Edge rescued the crew, provided repairs, and sent them on their way. The Federation captain, an elderly member of a species Jiho didn't recognize, seemed stunned by the assistance. Why? The captain asked. We are Federation. You are Coalition. Why help us? Because we're not fighting people, Jiho explained. We're fighting a system. You're just trying to make a living. That's not something we'd punish. The incident was small, but news of it spread. Throughout Federation space, ordinary citizens began to question what they had been told about the rebellious humans and their allies. If the Coalition was really dangerous, why did they rescue Federation ships? If they were really selfish, why did they help each other so effectively? Inside the Federation Council, the old order was cracking. Councillor Viarin called a private meeting with several other councillors who he knew were having doubts. One of them was Councillor Lyra, a member of a species that had joined the Federation long ago, but had always been uncomfortable with its methods. "We cannot continue like this," Viren said bluntly. "Every aggressive action pushes more members toward the coalition. Our economy is suffering. Our reputation is damaged. We are becoming exactly what the humans accused us of being." "Thane will never agree to change," Lyra said. "He and the other hardliners believe compromise is weakness." "Then perhaps it's time for a new council," Viren said quietly. It was a revolutionary statement. The council had always been unified, at least publicly. Internal disagreements were supposed to stay internal. But the situation was too serious for tradition. Back on Earth, Dr. Salmon made an announcement that shook the galaxy. Working with her coalition partners, she had developed a quantum communication network that would allow instant communication across any distance. No more lag time between stars. No more isolation. And before anyone asks, Salmon said during the press conference, "No, we're not just giving this away, but we're willing to license it fairly to anyone who wants it. Coalition members get preferential rates, but even Federation species can apply. We'll judge each request on its merits." The announcement caused chaos in Federation space. Instant communication would revolutionize everything from trade to military coordination to simply keeping in touch with loved ones across star systems. The Federation elder species had never developed anything like it because they had focused on acquiring existing technologies rather than pushing boundaries. Counselor Thane tried to ban Federation members from licensing the technology, but it was too late. The benefits were too obvious. Several major Federation species announced they would pursue licensing agreements, regardless of council approval. In desperation, Thane began organizing a major military operation. He gathered a fleet of over 100 ships, planning to strike at Earth itself. If humanity was destroyed, he reasoned, the coalition would collapse, but the plan leaked. Too many species within the Federation were tired of Thane's aggression. Someone sent the information to coalition intelligence, and they sent it to Admiral Hayne. "They're coming," Hayne told President Shin. "Thane's throwing everything at us." Shin looked at the projected numbers. 100 ships was more than the coalition could match, even with humanity's technological advantages. "We'll have to evacuate the civilian populations. Prepare for bombardment." Or, Jiho suggested from the Luna station where he was coordinating defenses, "We could end this another way," explained his plan. It was risky and required perfect timing, but it might just work. When Thane's fleet arrived at Earth's solar system, they found it ready. The coalition fleet was there, every ship they could muster. They were still outnumbered, but they weren't running. Then something unexpected happened. 30 Federation ships broke formation from Thane's fleet and took positions between the two sides. Their commander broadcast on all channels. "Counselor Thane, you do not speak for the entire Federation. Many of us are tired of this conflict. We will not participate in the destruction of Earth." More ships began to defect. Some joined the neutral group. Others simply left entirely. Thane's overwhelming force shrank to barely 50 ships. Traitors. Thane screamed over the communications. "All of you are traitors." "No," came a new voice. It was Counselor Lyra, broadcasting from the Federation Council station. "You are the traitor, Thane. You've betrayed everything the Federation was supposed to stand for. The Council has voted. You are removed from power. All ships are ordered to stand down immediately." Thane's flagship refused to comply, but one by one, the rest of his fleet withdrew. In the end, Thane stood alone, his ship surrounded. He was taken into custody by his own people. The war that might have destroyed everything ended without a shot fired. 1 year after humanity's refusal to share their quantum drive technology, Ambassador Hannah Choi stood in a very different kind of ceremony hall. This one was on a news station, built jointly by coalition members in neutral space. It was smaller than the Federation's Grand Hall, but it felt more alive somehow. The architecture blended elements from a dozen species, creating something unique and beautiful. Representatives from 27 species filled the room. Some were coalition members, others were Federation species who wanted to see what the alternative looked like. A few were completely independent worlds. that had avoided both groups until now. Everyone was here for the same reason: to witness the formal establishment of the Galactic Cooperative. Counselor Lyra stood at the central podium. After Thane's removal and arrest, she had become the leading voice for reform within the Federation. Today, she was here as a bridge between old and new. For 50,000 years, Lyra began, her voice carrying through the hall. The Federation maintained peace through control. We told ourselves it was necessary. We believed younger species needed our guidance. We were wrong. She paused, letting the words sink in. The humans showed us a different way. Not through conquest or rhetoric, but through example. They proved that cooperation between equals produces better results than hierarchy and exploitation. President Tywin Shin sat in the Earth's delegation area, listening carefully. Beside him were the leaders of the Marithian Republic, Kalhari Collective, and representatives from 24 other worlds. They had spent months negotiating the cooperative's charter, arguing over every detail, but ultimately agreeing on core principles that everyone could support. Dr. Soman. Lee watched from the Scientific Observers section. Next to her sat scientists from 8 different species, all of them working on the joint research station that orbited this very space. Their latest project was ambitious, combining quantum technology with biological computing and advanced materials, science to create something none of them could have built alone. We're calling it the Unity Drive. Solomon had explained to reporters yesterday. Not because it makes everyone think the same way, but because it works best when different technologies work together. Kinda like us. The ceremony continued with speeches from various leaders. Some were flowery and long, others brief and practical. The Rokash representatives spoke in mathematical equations that were somehow beautiful. The Denari leaders shaped their words into crystalline structures that hung in the air like art. Finally, it was humanity's turn. President Shin stepped up to the podium and looked out at the assembled species. A year ago, he said we were called arrogant for refusing to surrender our technology. We were threatened, sanctioned, and isolated. Some of you thought we would collapse. Others thought we would surrender. He smiled slightly. We didn't either. Instead, we offered friendship on terms of mutual respect. We said that we would share through trade, not tribute. That we would cooperate as equals, not subjects. He gestured to the beings around him. Look at what happened. Species that had been kept weak found strength. Innovations that had been hoarded are now being used to help everyone. Research that stagnated for centuries is suddenly leaping forward. His voice grew stronger. This is what's possible when we treat each other with dignity. When we recognize that every species, every culture, every world has value that cannot simply be taken or controlled. The room erupted in applause. Whistles, clicks, and sounds that humans had no names for yet. After the ceremony, various groups gathered to sign specific agreements. Trade treaties, research partnerships, defense pacts, and cultural exchanges. The room buzzed with activity and energy. Captain Jiho found himself talking with a Federation military commander, one of the officers who had defected during Thane's failed attack on Earth. I was told humans were dangerous, the commander admitted, that you would destroy galactic order. But when you rescued that cargo ship in distress, even though it was Federation, I realized everything I'd been told was propaganda. We're not perfect, Jiho said honestly. We make mistakes. We argue among ourselves. Sometimes we're petty or selfish, but we try to do better. That's all anyone can do. Elsewhere, Minister Sung Kwan was finalizing a trade agreement with 3 different species simultaneously. His staff looked exhausted but happy. The economic networks they were building would make all the member worlds more prosperous, and unlike the Federation's system, no one would be trapped in permanent debt. This is complicated, one of his assistants said. Looking at the spreadsheets, freedom usually is, Sung replied. The Federation's way was simpler. Just do what you're told and don't ask questions. But simple isn't the same as good. In a quieter corner, Ambassador Hannah met privately with Counselor Viren. The 4-armed alien looked older somehow, as if the stress of the past year had aged him. I owe you an apology, Viren said quietly. When you first raised concerns about the technology sharing accord, I dismissed them. I told myself you simply didn't understand how things worked, but you understood perfectly. Better than I did in some ways. I'm trying to fix it, Hannah said. That's what matters. Some of my colleagues in the Federation want to continue as we were, Viren admitted. They believe we can maintain the old system if we just crack down harder. But they're wrong. The galaxy has changed. We either change with it or become irrelevant. There's still room for the Federation, Hannah assured him. The cooperative isn't about destroying what you built. It's about offering an alternative. Maybe eventually we'll merge into something new. Or maybe both organizations will continue to exist, competing to serve their members better. Either way, everyone benefits. Viren looked at her curiously. You could have destroyed us. When Thane's fleet fell apart, when half our members were ready to leave, you could have pushed us into collapse. Why didn't you? Because that's not who we are, Hannah said simply. We don't want dominance. We just want fairness. The formal gathering eventually broke up into smaller celebrations. Different species shared food and drink, though not everything was compatible with every biology. Music from various worlds played, creating a strange but not unpleasant mix of sounds. Children from several species ran around together. Playing games that transcended language barriers, Dr. Salman found herself on a balcony, overlooking the station's central garden, a space filled with plants from 30 different worlds. Beside her was a Kelhari scientist she'd been working with. My grandmother worked on the original medical advances that made my people famous, the Kelhari said softly. She died believing she had failed because the Federation took her work and left us with nothing. I wish she could see this. See her research being used freely, being built upon by others who give proper credit. I think she'd be proud of you, Salman said. You're carrying on her work, making it even better. That's the thing about real cooperation, the Kelhari replied. Everyone's contribution makes everyone else's work stronger. It's not a zero-sum game. As the day turned to evening by station time, President Shin stood with Admiral Han and Captain Jiho, looking out at the stars through a massive viewport. You think this will last? Heon asked. Or will we just eventually become what we replaced? Maybe, Shin admitted. Power corrupts. Systems decay. But we've built something with accountability, with checks and balances, with the assumption that people should have choices. He smiled. And we've proven that stubborn humans will refuse to go along with exploitation. Even when it's easier to just comply, we're really good at being difficult. Jiho agreed with a grin. It's our best quality, Shin said. 6 months later, the Joint Research Station completed its first major project. The Unity Drive was tested successfully, combining technologies from 5 different species into something revolutionary. Ships equipped with it could travel faster, farther, and more safely than ever before, and true to cooperative principles. The technology wasn't simply released freely or hoarded greedily. It was licensed fairly to anyone who wanted it, with terms that ensured the contributing species all benefited. Federation worlds could apply for licenses. So could independent systems. The only requirement was agreeing to use it peacefully and paying fair compensation to the developers. Even the Federation Council eventually licensed it, though they grumbled about the cost. But they paid because the benefits were too good to pass up. And because refusing would have made them look petty, Dr. Soman stood in the research station's main laboratory, watching the data from the latest test flight come in. Scientists from 9 different species crowded around, everyone talking excitedly in their own languages while translation devices struggled to keep up. Look at this efficiency curve. A Rokash scientist was saying, its 4 eyes gleaming. If we modify the equation here, but only if we adjust the biological computing parameters, a Merithian interrupted, her antennae waving enthusiastically, which means reconfiguring the material structure. A Denari added, already sketching new molecular arrangements. Soman just smiled and let them work. This was collaboration at its finest, messy and loud and brilliant. Back on Earth, in a classroom in Seoul, a teacher was explaining to young students about humanity's place in the galaxy. A boy raised his hand. Teacher, why didn't we just share our technology like the Federation wanted? The teacher thought about how to explain it simply. because sometimes the easy choice isn't the right choice. The Federation wanted us to give up something valuable without getting real fairness in return. Your parents teach you not to let others take advantage of you, right? The students nodded. Well, it's the same thing with entire planets. We respected ourselves enough to say no to a bad deal. And because we did, we helped other species find their own courage to stand up for themselves too. Another student raised her hand. Are we heroes? The teacher laughed gently. We're just people who made a hard choice and got lucky that it worked out. The real heroes are all the species who decided to work together to build something better. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On Merithian worlds, on Kalhari stations. In Rokash academies and Denari meditation chambers, young beings learned about the year everything changed. They learned that systems could be challenged, that the way things had always been done wasn't the only way, that dignity and fairness were worth fighting for. The Galactic Federation still existed, but it had reformed significantly. Counselor Lyra had led a complete restructuring of the technology-sharing accord, making it voluntary and equitable. Many Federation members now participated in both organizations. Seeing no contradiction in seeking the best from each, some historians would later call it the Quiet Revolution. No massive battles, no dramatic conquests, just one species refusing to be exploited and showing others that refusal was possible. From that single act of defiance, everything else had followed. Ambassador Hannah, now retired from active diplomacy and teaching at a university, was often asked if she had known how it would turn out. Not at all. She always answered honestly. We were terrified. We thought we might be destroyed. But we also knew that surviving by surrendering who we were wasn't really surviving at all. So we took the chance. Would you do it again? Students would ask. Every single time she would say, because some things are worth the risk. And in the end, that was the lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. Not that humans were superior or special, but that everyone deserved respect. That exploitation, dressed up as cooperation, was still exploitation. And that stubborn resistance to injustice could change the universe. The Federation had brought 50,000 years of peace through control. The cooperative was building something different, something messier and more challenging, but ultimately more honest. Peace through choice, progress through partnership, unity through respecting diversity. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still problems to solve. But now those problems were faced by equals working together, not subjects obeying masters. And somewhere in deep space, on a joint Coalition Federation research vessel, humans and aliens worked side by side on projects none of them could have imagined alone. They argued and laughed and made mistakes and celebrated successes. They shared meals, swapped stories, and built friendships that crossed the vast distances between stars. That, more than any treaty or technology, was humanity's true gift to the galaxy. The simple, revolutionary idea that everyone